What would you do if a thrilling cave adventure turned into a fight against nature itself? Imagine being deep underground, surrounded by solid rock with only a single path back to the surface. But then, the sound of rushing water grows louder, and suddenly you realize the cave is flooding. Before we dive into the video, I'd like to ask for your support by subscribing to our channel. Currently, only 8% of our viewers are subscribed, but your subscription helps us create more content like this. Simply click the subscribe button, like this video, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads. In Clover Hollow Cave, 4 brave explorers found themselves trapped as rain poured down above, sending a torrent of water into the cave's narrow passages. Their exit was now a waterfall, cold and severe, blocking their way. With water rising and temperatures dropping, the group faced a desperate choice: wait for help, or make a risky climb through the ice spray. Would they survive the dark and dangerous cave, or would it become their final resting place? Welcome to the unique world of Clover Hollow Cave, a natural gem hidden within the Clover Hollow Natural Area Preserve in Giles County, Virginia. This cave is part of a carefully protected 25-acre area, preserved not only for its natural beauty, but also for the incredible biodiversity it harbors. Inside Clover Hollow Cave, you'll find a delicate ecosystem that's home to rare and common cave-dwelling species alike. This makes it a valuable conservation site for Virginia's Department of Conservation and Recreation, which oversees its protection. One of the most intriguing parts of Clover Hollow Cave is its invertebrate community. 7 rare cave-dwelling invertebrates live here, 3 of which are found only in the Sinking Creek Valley area of Giles County. These unique species make the cave an important conservation site, as they cannot be found anywhere else. Now, besides these rare creatures, you can spot more familiar cave inhabitants, including salamanders, crickets, spiders, and even crayfish. Bats are also known to call this cave home, making use of its cool, dark spaces. The history of Clover Hollow Cave's conservation dates back to 1994, when speleologist Dave Hubbard took on the task of studying the cave, driven by concerns from the local community. His inventory brought to light the ecological importance of the site, catching the attention of both the Virginia Natural Heritage Program and the Cave Conservancy of the Virginias. These groups recognized the cave as a priority for preservation, and after years of effort, the state took control of the land in 2005 to protect this irreplaceable habitat. Entering Clover Hollow Cave is an adventure in itself. The entrance is an oblong pit about 60 feet deep, located at the end of a small blind stream bed. After securing a rope to a large tree at the pit's edge, cavers typically rappelled down into the entrance chamber, greeted by a hallway-shaped corridor. As you move deeper, the passage narrows, leading to a 3-foot-wide straddle pit with a 15-foot drop at its far end. Here, the journey involves a bit of maneuvering, but with careful navigation, the cave opens up again. Further along, there are small challenges like hand climbs and nuisance rappels, meaning short descents that require some vertical climbing skills, but add to the excitement. Eventually, cavers encounter a significant 90-foot drop that descends into a large passage below. Here, the sound of flowing water can sometimes be heard, although most of the cave remains dry, with only minor drainage from forested slopes feeding into small pools and streams. Now, beyond the main descent, the cave offers a maze of passageways and intriguing corridors that showcase the geological beauty of this underground world. This network of twisting paths, short climbs, and open chambers allows cavers to explore and appreciate the untouched natural features, such as rock formations and crystal-clear drip pools. In Clover Hollow Cave, every step holds a discovery. Its fragile ecosystem and remarkable biodiversity create a fascinating experience for those who have the opportunity to explore its depths. Due to its delicate nature, access is restricted to research and monitoring, preserving this hidden marvel for generations to come. So while it may be out of reach for everyday explorers, the allure of Clover Hollow Cave remains, a preserved wonder beneath Virginia's landscape, teeming with life and mystery. On the morning of April 14th, 1984, 4 adventurous cavers, Larry Ostrander, Sonia Ostrander, Jane Glasser, and Tom Spina set out for an exciting journey into the depths of Clover Hollow Cave in Virginia. The group was undeterred, as they had explored this cave before and felt confident in their knowledge of its passages and challenges. They were eager to revisit familiar spots, like the gypsum room, and explore areas they hadn't yet seen. The weather on the morning of the cave exploration was uncertain and a bit risky. It had rained the night before, so the ground was still damp, and the air felt heavy with moisture. Weather reports warned of more scattered showers throughout the day, meaning that there was a good chance of more rain. This kind of weather can be dangerous for caving because rainwater can flow into caves, causing water levels to rise inside, especially near the entrance. The group arrived at the cave entrance at around 11 a.m. They carefully checked the conditions. From what they could see, the entrance didn't have much more water than it did on their previous visit. There was only a light trickle, which seemed safe enough. The ground around the entrance was a little muddy, but steady, and there was no rushing water, which gave them the confidence to proceed. They knew that rainwater could still find its way into the cave if a heavier rain started, especially through small cracks in the rock or from the forested slopes above. Even so, the entrance looked safe enough at that moment, and they felt ready to go forward, trusting that they could manage any slight increase in water. They stood before the cave entrance, checking their gear one last time. Each carried a helmet, headlamp, ropes, and a supply of snacks and water. The Ostranders, experienced cavers who had tackled many caves before, felt prepared for the day's journey. Tom Spina, who enjoyed the thrill of navigating through tight spaces and rugged terrain, was also enthusiastic, while Jane Glasser, always captivated by underground rock formations, was excited to capture the experience in her mind's eye. As they descended, the cave's entrance seemed stable, and there was no noticeable increase in water flow compared to previous trips, despite the rain. The group quickly rigged the ropes for 2 vertical drops just inside the entrance, each of them descending carefully into the cave. They soon found themselves navigating a section known as the Grand Canyon, a narrow, winding passageway with walls towering on either side. This tight section required maneuvering, but was manageable for the experienced group. Their first main stop was the gypsum room, where beautiful crystal formations sparkled in the dim light of their headlamps. The group was amazed by the delicate, sparkling formations and took a few moments to enjoy the peaceful beauty. Not knowing about the storm outside, they continued to other parts of the cave, making this journey a memorable one. But while the group explored deep inside the cave, the weather on the surface quickly took a turn for the worse. Dark clouds rolled in, and what was supposed to be light, scattered showers turned into a heavy, steady downpour. Rain began falling hard, covering the ground with almost 2 inches of water in a short time. This heavy rainfall was much more intense than the cavers had expected. As the rainwater collected, it started flowing across the land and into the cave's small openings. It began filling the narrow passages and channels inside the cave, creating streams and pools that the group couldn't see or hear from where they were coming from. This unexpected flood was slowly making its way toward them, adding a hidden layer of danger to their journey in the underground maze. When the cavers decided that it was time to head back, they made their way toward the Grand Canyon passage, a narrow stretch in the cave that was now looking very different from when they first entered. They noticed that water levels had risen. What had been just a light trickle of water before was now flowing steadily through the passage. The gentle stream had turned into a strong flow, winding through the narrow path and making each step more difficult and slippery. The cavers moved carefully, keeping a close watch on the water that seemed to be rising little by little. A feeling of concern settled in as they realized that the rain outside must have been heavier than they'd expected. As they got closer to the first of 2 steep drops near the entrance, they were shocked to see water pouring over the edge. Earlier, there had only been a trickle of water here, but now it was a powerful rush, like a waterfall, with water spilling down the drop forcefully. The once calm cave entrance was now filled with the noise and pressure of falling water. Seeing the situation, Larry Ostrander, who was known for staying calm under pressure, decided to go up first. He wanted to check the rope in the strong flow to make sure that it was safe for everyone to use. Despite the water pushing against him, Larry carefully climbed up, testing each move to be sure that he was secure. He finally reached the top of the drop, and, with relief, he called down to the others that he had made it safely. This gave them a bit of hope, but they knew that they still had to face the challenging ascent themselves in the rushing water. Sonia Ostrander followed, while Tom Spida, who was holding the rope steady to keep it from being fully submerged, waited below. The process was slow and tense. Each person had to be careful not to lose their grip in the forceful flow. By the time Jane Glasser ascended, the remaining two, Tom and Sonia, were growing anxious, especially with the low area near the entrance looming ahead. If the water rose too high, it could block them from reaching the exit. As the group made their way through the cave, the rising water made them uneasy. They began to discuss options for taking shelter inside the cave in case the water kept rising and they couldn't make it out. They talked about possible high spots they could retreat to, places that were dry and safe from the flooding. The idea of spending the night in the cave felt unsettling, yet they wanted to be prepared for the worst. The thought of being trapped underground began to weigh on them, creating a growing sense of tension and even a hint of claustrophobia. What had felt thrilling and safe at the start now felt cold, cramped, and even threatening. To continue their escape, the group had to cross a section called the straddle passage. This narrow area required each person to press their hands and feet against the cave walls for balance. The passage was already slippery from the rising water, making it even more challenging. Each of them moved slowly and carefully, afraid that one wrong step could make their situation worse. With every inch they advanced, they feared that the rising water could cut off their exit if they didn't move fast enough. At last, they reached the entrance drop, the final obstacle between them and the outside. But instead of the dry descent that they had expected, the entrance was now a powerful waterfall, with water rushing down forcefully. A misty breeze from the falling water filled the area, quickly chilling the two remaining cavers, Tom and Sonia, who were still at the bottom of the drop. Larry and Jane, who had already made it to the top, tried to adjust the ropes, hoping to keep them out of the water to make the final ascent easier for the others. Sonia went next, gripping the rope tightly as she climbed up. The cold water sprayed her, leaving her shivering by the time she reached the top, but she made it. Now only Tom was left at the bottom. He had been holding the rope steady for Sonia, but his hands were nearly numb from the icy water. By the time it was his turn, he was exhausted and weakened by the cold. He tried to climb up, but halfway through he realized that he didn't have enough strength left to make it to the top. Tom knew that he couldn't climb up on his own, so he called out for help. Larry and Jane understood how dire the situation had become. As the night grew colder, they lowered a small pack down to Tom. It contained hot coffee, sugar, a space blanket, and some raisins and peanuts to give him energy. Tom wrapped himself in a garbage bag to try to stay warm and ate the snacks, hoping to regain some strength. Meanwhile, the others quickly made contact with the surface and alerted emergency services. They explained that Tom was not able to climb up on his own and urgently needed assistance. Waiting for the rescue team to arrive was tense and nerve-wracking. Larry, Jane, and Sonia stayed close to the entrance, watching for any signs of Tom's condition worsening and hoping that help would reach him in time. Finally, at around 9 p.m., a rescuer arrived and made his way down to Tom's location. The rescuer found Tom cold and tired, but stable. He provided additional warmth, checked Tom's climbing gear, and encouraged him, helping him get ready for the climb. With the rescuer's help and one last burst of effort, Tom managed to climb up the drop. Slowly but surely, he made his way to the top and was finally free from the cave's dark, damp interior. By 10 p.m., Tom emerged into the night air, where his friends greeted him with relief and gratitude. The group felt a huge sense of relief and gratitude toward the rescue team. This experience showed them just how quickly a simple caving trip could become life-threatening. What had started as an exciting adventure turned into a test of endurance, teamwork, and courage. Even though the group was experienced and had prepared well, the unpredictable force of nature added an unexpected danger that transformed their thrilling journey into a story of survival. In the end, the group's preparation and experience helped them through a very risky situation. They had brought supplies like food, coffee, and even garbage bags for warmth, which turned out to be crucial for keeping Tom Spina safe until rescuers arrived. Tom made a wise decision to avoid making a dangerous last-minute attempt to climb the waterfall in a do-or-die fashion. By choosing to wait for help, he avoided what could have been a life-threatening mistake. However, there was one big error in their plan that led to this close call. The group had decided to enter a cave with a stream just after it had rained, and with more rain in the forecast. Caves with streams or water channels can become very dangerous in wet weather. Rainwater can flow into these channels and cause water levels to rise quickly, turning a gentle trickle into a powerful flood. Even though the group saw only a small amount of water at the entrance, they underestimated how quickly things could change with heavy rain on the surface. To prevent this kind of accident, it's best to avoid entering caves with water channels or streams when there's been recent rain, or if more rain is expected. Even light rain can cause flooding underground. Cavers should always check weather reports carefully and reschedule their plans if there's any chance of rain. Additionally, it's important to bring extra supplies like food, water, and warmth gear, as the group did in case of unexpected delays. This experience highlighted the unpredictable nature of caving and the importance of prioritizing safety and caution over excitement, especially when dealing with the forces of nature. Thank you for joining us on this intense journey through Clover Hollow Cave. We hope this story has shown just how thrilling but also dangerous cave exploration can be. Remember, nature is beautiful, but it's also unpredictable. If you're considering exploring caves yourself, always make safety your top priority. Check the weather, prepare thoroughly, and don't take any unnecessary risks. In 2004, Elios Medina and his group of 9 other cave divers arrived at an enormous sinkhole in Mexico. They planned to dive hundreds of feet down, but they immediately ran into trouble. There were no safe anchors for their ropes. Then, one caver accidentally angered the wildlife living in the sinkhole. Medina risked his life to save his fellow cavers who were dangling hundreds of feet above the cave's floor. Did they make it out alive? Or did the creatures inside the cave claim their lives? Find out as we explore the story of the Pozo de Gavilan cave rescue. Mexico's landscape is riddled with sinkholes, and these deep caves have shaped Mexico's history. The Yucatan Peninsula is the most famous center for Mexican sinkholes. The potholes of the Yucatan Peninsula are called cenotes, though sometimes this term is used for all Mexican vertical caves. Over time, these cenotes, or sinkholes, fill with water. Some of these holes connected to vast underground cave networks and subterranean lakes. Ancient Mayan civilizations used the cenotes for fresh supplies of water, and they were also used for human sacrifices. Although the Yucatan Peninsula has Mexico's most famous potholes, many other sinkholes are found across the country, including Pozo de Gavilan, which is found in Mexico's northeastern state of Nuevo León. Nuevo León is home to rocky terrain that's perfect for caves to form. With over 1,500 mountains in the region, you can find caves in every direction. Otherwise known as Eagle's Hole, Pozo de Gavilan is a gorgeous attraction that brings nature lovers, climbers, and sightseers from far and wide to gaze at its enormous entrance. One day, back in 2004, a group of 10 cavers arrived at the mouth of the cave. The group chose Pozo de Gavilan because it was both beautiful and mysterious. Elios Medinas and 4 other members of the team were trained cave divers. They came to Pozo de Gavilan to explore the submerged cave beneath the lake at the bottom of the sinkhole. Once submerged by the cool waters, they hope to find a connection between this cave and the nearby Labrador Lagoon, or Laguna de Labradores, which is about 1.5 miles away. The other half of the team were less experienced. They came to practice vertical climbing for future trips, and some may have been interested in the rumors surrounding Pozo de Gavilan. The scientists weren't impressed by the legends of shape-changing horse people, but they brought the others along anyway. Instead of superstition, though, these day cavers and visitors should be aware of traveling to the sinkhole at night. Vicious cartels and other gangsters take refuge in caves to hide their illegal activities, while others wait to ambush unsuspecting tourists along the dusty roads. If any bandits stumbled upon their cars, they would be easy targets to mug. Or, if they were truly evil, cartels could simply put their cars into reverse or neutral and send the climbers crashing into the lake below, staining the pure waters with blood and rust. Now, thankfully, the team arrived early in the day to avoid the possibility of bandits. Pozo de Gavilan's surface entrance is 200 feet wide. If it weren't for the pristine, crystal blue waters below, it would look man-made. The subterranean lake of the sinkhole rests 300 feet below the surface, or nearly the length of a football field straight down. For much of the day, the lake is shrouded by shadow, and no wind reaches these cold depths, allowing unique species to thrive in the waters below. The cavers absorbed the beautiful view from the ledge and then looked for a strong rock or tree to anchor their ropes around, but only dry dust whisked around their ankles. The team decided to improvise. They drove their car close to the ledge, and then backed up until pebbles kicked back from their rear tires and tumbled into the waters below. They attached 2 ropes to one of their cars and rappelled off the side of the cliff. A short distance down, they rigged another secondary anchor to support them in case something went wrong. The divers attached their scuba equipment below their harness so that they could easily disconnect the heavy equipment in an emergency. The second warning sign happened while they were still rigging the ropes for their mission. Medina was leading the charge. As he climbed down, he began to realize he was dropping faster than he intended. The rope was also gaining slack, which meant he could go into free fall at any second. The sudden pull of his weight could dislodge the anchors and possibly even send the car over the ledge. He acted fast and wrapped the rope around his leg. The friction slowed his fall until he stopped, but the rope tore his flesh from his thigh, giving him a massive rope burn. Now, despite the sting of exposed flesh, he continued his descent, and the rest of the divers followed. Once in the lake, the team equipped their scuba gear and prepared to explore the cave. Once they were ready to dive, they swam under a hole in the side of the rock. This overhang bends down into another vertical section that connects to the rest of the cave. They followed the ceiling until it curved into the walls, and then they began their dive. The team only went another 120 feet down until this side passage turned into a horizontal path that went deeper into the cold, dark waters below ground. They were physically exhausted from rigging the ropes and traveling all the way to the sinkhole. Medina's team had confirmed the cave was below the sinkhole, which was a good start. Since this connection mission could be a massive exploration, they decided to save this section for later. The team took off their scuba gear once again, and one by one, they started climbing up the sinkhole to exit the cave. They decided to have some of the most experienced cavers climb up first, while the other experienced cavers would climb up last. That way, if anyone ran into trouble, the experts could assist from either end of the climb. As the best caver there, Medina volunteered to be the last person out of Pozo de Gavilan. 5 hours after they started their adventure, 2 of the experts made it out of the cave. 4 cavers, including Medina, were waiting down below, while 4 more newbie cavers were climbing up the walls of the sinkhole in tandem. That's when all hell broke loose. Halfway up the wall, one of the cavers looked down to position her feet. Then, she glanced up the sheer rock and reached her hand out to grab a solid hand. In her haste, the amateur didn't realize what she was actually grabbing. Her hand depressed the surface of the hold, releasing a strange, crunching sound. Her body slipped forward after she put weight onto her hand as the object broke open. She had accidentally broken a beehive. Immediately, a swarm of insects engulfed the caver. But these were no ordinary bees. These were an invasive species of Africanized killer bees. In 1956, Brazilian farmers bred the killer bee to increase honey production. Some of the swarms broke out of the hives and spread all across South America. Killer bees often make nests in holes in the ground. like the small divots along the walls of Pozo de Gavilan. These creatures are much more aggressive than normal European bees. They can chase other animals for a quarter mile, and they sting 10 times more than regular bees. They've also killed large animals like horses and over 1,000 humans since they first broke out into the wild. The first caver immediately sat back in her saddle, swatting at the buzzing swarm. The bees quickly spread out and attacked all 4 cavers who were climbing near one another. 3 women and 1 man screamed in terror and pain as the bees tore into their flesh. Medina looked up the side of the cave and saw all the cavers flailing. A new rope came down overhead. It went taut as 2 of the experienced cavers who made it to the ledge reattached their harnesses and leaned off the side to assist their friends and colleagues. The pair had affixed a 3rd rope to climb down separately. This would give the other cavers a better chance, and, if need be, they could distract the swarm while their friends could climb up their own ropes. The moment the 2 cavers got in range, the swarm flew up to attack them as well. Since caving was in their blood, they could perform climbing maneuvers without thinking about what to do as they swatted at the yellow menace. By this point, the 4 cavers in the epicenter of the swarm weren't able to climb. They were struggling to even fight back as their bodies began to swell from toxins. One of the 2 experts reached the woman who was highest up the rope from the incident. She was in bad shape. The caver hooked a new attachment to her harness and connected it to his rope. He knew what he needed to do, but he knew it would be risky. He took out his knife and started sawing through the connections that kept her stuck on her current rope. She would be attached to his line from only 1 carabiner clip. He had to make sure her weight gradually added tension to the rope. Otherwise, the sudden shift could cause them both to plummet. Once her slings were removed, he dragged her up the rocky mouth of the cave and onto the ledge above. This caver then immediately climbed back down. He cut the ascender connections of another trapped caver and made the grueling trip back up the cliffside, all while being repeatedly hammered by the deadly bees. Once he got up the cliff with the second rescued caver, he fell to the ground. The sting from Africanized bees contains the same amount of venom as a regular honeybee, but the volume of stings is far greater, which means victims get more venom than normal attacks, and their rate of symptom onset approaches much faster. Bee stings will cause instant pain, followed by redness and swelling that increases for up to 2 days. But during extreme attacks like these, the victim's throats and tongues can swell. The venom can restrict breathing and cause nausea. If the stings don't stop, the venom will cause increased heart rate with changes to blood pressure, which ultimately causes the victims to pass out. After these inflammatory stings, the body releases cytokines to control the immune response. In very rare cases, this inflammation can lead to lifelong chronic inflammatory diseases like polyradicular neuropathy, and it can even disrupt blood flow to the brain, leading to a cerebral infarction and necrotic dead brain tissue. The brave caver who had rescued 2 of his friends started vomiting uncontrollably from the venom surging through his veins. Once his convulsions slowed, he jammed his stiff hand into his pocket and flipped open his old clamshell phone to call for an emergency rescue. The cavers realized that if they stopped moving, the bees would halt their assault. In these brief moments of safety, they were able to shout down to Medina to explain what was happening. Medina struggled into his wetsuit while the first 2 cavers were being rescued. The wetsuit is a neoprene layer that keeps scuba divers warm in the cold depths. These suits also form a protective layer from scrapes, but they're very rigid and tight. It can be a struggle to get them on, so usually divers will get help from a friend who can hoist the material up and over their shoulders as they wriggle into the material. Medina thought that the suit could protect him from some of the stings. But since Mexico is usually warm, they would have opted for lighter wetsuits that could only provide as little as 0.5 millimeter of protection. If they had brought cold weather gear, Medina would have effectively had full protection against the stings. Medina realized this problem and hesitated. He told the cavers to change their gear into rappel mode and lower themselves back into the water. That way, they'd be further from the swarm and they could float to conserve energy. At this point, the one caver was over halfway up the sinkhole, while the other was only 80 feet from the bottom. The stuck cavers tried to follow his instructions, but as soon as they tried to move, the bees sprang back into action and needled them with their stingers. Medina stole his nerves and began the climb to aid his friends. He and another caver approached the lowest altitude victim. This time, they could work together instead of a single rescuer doing all the work. The other caver cut the victim's ropes, while Medina connected a lanyard to his harness. Medina positioned himself above the caver so that the victim was hanging from Medina's harness while Medina was attached to the rope. Medina rappelled down to the waterline, with the third caver finally free from the onslaught of bees. Just as he was about to abseil up the pothole, the last trapped caver began to jerk. Her whole body started to rise in short bursts. Up above the other cavers started the car that acted as the anchor for their ropes. Now at first it seemed like it was working. The final caver had rose from her position, but the anchors in the rock quickly became problematic. The angle from the car to her had put too much tension on the rope, and the stone of the cave's entrance was cutting the rope with each press of the car's accelerator. They put the car in park again. The final trapped caver was crying in pain. Fear gripped her as she swayed helplessly above the waters of the cave. She wanted to just climb up, but Medina warned her not to. Even though she had gone a bit further up the cliff, the team's plan to use the car had exerted extreme tension on the rope and its anchors. Any wrong move could cause the whole system to collapse, sending her straight to her death. Meanwhile, the rescued caver at the bottom of the pothole was showing signs of shock. His skin was cool, with bluish-gray colors forming on his lips and fingernails. His eyes were wide and his pulse was rapid. Quick changes in blood pressure from the venom could result in death, so the team tried to warm him up and keep his pulse even. An hour later, and the rescue crew arrived. 50 members of local emergency response teams and combined cave and mountain rescue groups arrived to lend their team their aid. But was it too late? By the time they arrived, the caver who was still stuck on the rope had stopped moving. She didn't respond to her fellow cavers when they called to her. As the rescuers approached the cliff, the bees flew up the mouth of the cave and stung anyone within a few hundred feet of Pozo de Gavilan's entrance. The rescuers worked through the pain, and the combined force of the 50-person team enabled them to pull the rope safely through the anchors. They brought the unresponsive caver to the surface as their top priority. She was still alive, but her life was on a knife's edge. They raced her to the ambulance and to the city of Galiana for immediate critical care. Next, they brought up the caver who was near shock floating on the surface of the underground lake. Rescuers sent down a stretcher, and Medina helped wrap him in protective gear supplied by their saviors. The team pulled him up through the hellish swarm of killer bees and loaded him into another ambulance. One of the bees found its way inside and caused a panic as they tried to kill it without damaging the delicate equipment. One wrong move could send scalpels or needles into someone's arm, neck, or eyes. Though they got the vile creature out of the door and drove off. The expert caver who started throwing up after rescuing 2 of his friends had to spend the night in the hospital. The second woman he rescued spent 3 days in the hospital after she was stung over 600 times. The woman who accidentally woke the demons of the cave was stung 900 times and spent over 12 days in the hospital. The man whose life seemed to be on the verge of collapse bounced back quickly, and he only spent 3 days in the hospital. The final caver, the woman stuck on the rope the longest, was stung over 1,100 times. She spent a week in the intensive care unit, followed by 2 more weeks in a regular hospital room, until a blood clot forced her back into critical care. After nearly 3 months in the hospital, she made a recovery and went home. That day, after the worst injured cavers were rescued, one by one, the team who was unharmed at the bottom climbed the side of the cave with the help of the rescue crew. Medina stuck to his plan and was indeed the last person to climb out of Pozo de Gavilan that fateful day.